Funny enough, model railroading got its start kind of like railroading did. There wasn't any one standard. Everybody was doing what they wanted. It wasn't uncommon to see 6 or 12 volts DC or 16 and this makes me cringe, 115 volts AC on the rails. And you want to know why that makes me cringe? I have a real life experience that maybe one day I'll even share with you. But I'll leave it at there's a reason I stress electrical safety so much. So circa 1930, you have a Model Railroad Club in Pittsburgh and another one in Columbus, and they decide that, hey, we'll go over to Pittsburgh one month and you can come to Columbus the next, and we'll run our equipment on each other's layouts, which is great because they had standards. But the standards weren't the same standards. So if you were from Pittsburgh, your equipment wouldn't run well, if at all, on the Columbus layout, and vice versa. And this caused a bit of consternation, and the model railroading community being what it is, it took a couple years, but in 1934, those two clubs plus the club from New York City, a club from Detroit, and another one from Milwaukee got together and decided, hey, we need to make some standards for the whole thing. In 1935, 71 people got together and they formed the NMRA, for good and for evil. Okay, before we dive into the history here, I wanted to clear up something. NEM standards are what are used over in Europe, not NMRA standards. NMRA is purely North American. NEM are issued by MOROP, and the two are not universally interchangeable, but in recent years, MOROP and NMRA have been working together to create a universal digital command control standard. Now, as far as the NMRA goes, their website has a complete history highlight of the first 75 years of their national meetings with a sprinkling of opinion. And if you want to check out everything they've done, head over to their website. In 1936, O-scale standards were adopted, HO standards were proposed, and OO standards were left to the discretion of two companies that showed up to the meeting that happened to manufacture OO. In 1937, they made a logo and a pin. Yay. In 1940, the Battle of the Couplers was fought. And couplers, as you will see, are kind of a recurring nightmare. In 1944, proposed standards for S-scale and 12 volts DCC were recommended. Let's see, 1950 couplers were the big issue of the day, and in 1955, the infamous X2F coupler was proposed. The manufacturers didn't wait for the NMRA approval and began cranking out stuff with these couplers. And now, those X2F couplers, horn couplers, are great for automatic coupling, but uncoupling them is kind of a nightmare. If you've used them, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't, avoid them like the plague. KD for HO is kind of the unofficial standard at this point, and it's the good quality equipment already has the KDs on them, so just stick with that. That's my recommendation. 1957, recommended practices, what we do with our models, were approved. These are the recommendations that I use to build my standards. The coupler debate, of course, raged on, and in 1959, somebody had the idea to make all standards scalable, adjusting the tolerances to suit the scale, and that was a brilliant idea as far as I'm concerned, and so on. The NMRA, no matter how one personally feels about them, and there are people that just absolutely despise them, they helped get things to where we could buy rolling stock from different manufacturers, and lo and behold, it would just work. Unlike Fallout 76 or Skyrim Basically anything Todd Howard has tried to sell. Ever. You know, funny enough, model railroading kind of started out the same place that railroading started, and I'm going to try that again.
This has been a Fish Chips production.